My name is John Passfield, and I'm going to read from my Pompeii novel. This is video 6, Julia. Love denied as a question. Julia reflects on her life. Here is the novel. The cover, Pompeii, Vesuvius Dominus, a novel by John Passfield. And I'm going to read a summary of the novel from the back cover. On the afternoon of AD 79, a white cloud appears above Mount Vesuvius. It begins to deposit a layer of ash on the nearby town of Pompeii. Gradually, the people of Pompeii become aware that an awesomely destructive natural force has unleashed its full fury against the lives that they have established in their community. As they are swept up in the destructive experience, three people consider the premises by which they have lived their lives. Well, I'm only going to concentrate on one. Pliny the Elder, I'm not dealing with in this video. Pliny the Younger, I dealt with in a previous video. This is going to be Julia, the 17-year-old girl who fell in love with Pliny the Younger and has now, in the summer of AD 79, the destruction summer, been forbidden to see him, and is trying to forget him as a dutiful young Roman daughter, but is finding that very difficult. So she can't help thinking, and she reviews her whole life. How did I get here? Where do I go from here? Who should I trust? Who should I not trust? Who should I emulate? Who should I not? So it's a Romeo and Juliet story. The love affair was in the summer of AD 78. They're forbidden to see each other, as I mentioned, this summer, the summer of AD 79, the summer of destruction. As the two are thinking about their lives, Pliny and Julia, there's a white cloud above Vesuvius. It sends down ash, almost like snow in southern Ontario. Attractive at first, interesting at first, but gradually becoming ominous for the people. So the two live through that experience, but deeper down in their minds, they're reviewing their past summer as an experience, and the present moment as a moment of decision and evaluation. So they respond to the volcanic explosion with their conscious minds. They remember the progress of a love story of the summer before, deeper down in their minds. Here's just a summary of the love affair of AD 78. They're two very powerful Romans. His uncle is a Navy man. Her father is an Army man. The two 17-year-olds are thrust together to cement a political deal that is being negotiated. They fall in love, which is good. The deal goes sour, which is unfortunate. And so the two adults forbid the two 17-year-olds to see each other. So then as we move through AD 79, the summer of destruction, both remember last summer and both evaluate their lives. And as I said, we're dealing with Julia in this video. There's 4 sections in each Julia chapter. Julia has 5 chapters, but I'm only going to read from 3 of them. I just want to give the flavor. So I'll just find my first page here. It's page 27 for Julia. Just a little bit of the action to set the scene. Let me get the page straight here. Yeah. Julia, her first realization that something a little different is happening is this. A white cloud in the sky, just a cloud. The servants stopping in the flower beds and pointing and talking. Well, Julia's on the slopes of Vesuvius, not in the most dangerous part, as we find out later, at her father's villa. And she's kind of banished herself for a few days from Pompeii. It's a city of painful memories, a town of painful memories, because she fell in love with Pliny there and has been forbidden to see him. So she goes out with the servants to collect flowers. She oversees, they do the work at her father's country villa. But she can't stop thinking of Pompeii, and she can't stop thinking of Pliny. So here are her thoughts. This is page 28. I just had to get away from Pompeii. I had to avoid my father's townhouse and the houses of my friends and my relatives. I just had to spend a couple of days away. A meeting at father's townhouse tomorrow, a meeting with Regulus and his father, a meeting for the fathers to formulate their wedding plans. So the deal with Pliny's uncle having fallen through, Julia's father is now working on a deal with another powerful Roman because Julia's father wants to advance the interests of the army, and he can cement that deal by forcing his daughter to marry that man's son, Regulus. So that's a meeting tomorrow to kind of set that up. She doesn't want to go. I sometimes wonder whether it was Pliny who undermined the negotiations. I wonder if Father and Pliny's uncle were disappointed when their plans fell through. Perhaps it was Pliny who refused to go along. So part of what she's trying to do is stop loving Pliny. So maybe she can reevaluate Pliny and find reasons why Pliny shouldn't be loved. It'll be a little easier to follow her father's plans for her and stop loving Pliny. So I wonder if Pliny was the one who undermined the deal. Beloved Pliny. Page 30. Excuse my voice. What if Pliny and his uncle should come to my wedding to Regulus? They are prominent men in Rome. The fleet is stationed at Misenum. How could they not attend? Perhaps Regulus is not such a terrible marriage prospect after all. I barely met him, and we only exchanged a few words. I avoided him all last winter when we were in Rome. I still don't know what to make of Pliny's uncle. Perhaps it was he who led my father on. Perhaps he was being devious all along. So in order to think accurately, we have to evaluate the people in our lives. The people in our lives are forces, image forces. And we have to evaluate. Think of Othello and Iago, Othello and Desdemona. Evaluating the people in your lives as image forces in order to decide what to do, what to think even. Page 31. Life was simpler a year ago. I was living in a fairy tale. I could have posed for a painting on a mural or a statue in a garden. Oh, Father, sometimes when I'm straightening the folds of your robe, I want to grab you and give you a shake and talk to you. I want to tell you just exactly how I feel. Why would anyone want to make plans? Why would anyone want to look even one day ahead? Who is a soothsayer who could say which seeds will grow? Life was simpler when I was a child. Father and mother and little me, toys scattered all over the mosaics on the floor. Excuse me again. Mother and I are living in two different worlds. How could she possibly know how I feel? It was so long ago that she was my age that she's forgotten every feeling she ever had. Perhaps someday Pliny and I could have a talk. Not now, of course, but far in the future. There must be things that we would both feel better to know. And that's that chapter. And I'm leaving out a lot here. Let me find my page here as I talk, 101. Leaving out a lot of the larger topic of the destruction, of course. It's not the topic of this video, but also leaving out some of Julia's thoughts just to keep the video to reasonable length. By chapter 12, which is the third Julia chapter, an extremely restless night. I don't mind it as of late. I've still had a night of unbroken sleep. So the ash is raining down, but still not dangerous enough to leave the villa, she figures, and some of the slaves who know the mountain and how it behaves and so on. This has happened before in a lighter way, mild earthquakes and so on. Thinking of Pliny, though, as this is happening. If I ever meet Pliny in Pompeii, I will surely die. If I should be strolling through the forum or passing by in the street as I'm chatting with the baker about the number of rolls we shall need, I would be stunned. Then on to the thoughts that I'm concentrating on here. The portico where Pliny and I used to sit, the paths we used to stroll through, the gardens. Father's villa is just as cruel a place as Father's townhouse in Pompeii. Father has learned his lesson well. He has kept Regulus and I apart this summer until his political plans are firm. He doesn't seem to want a repeat of the Pliny experience. Well, the problem was the two kids fell in love, so had he made his political deal and then introduced the two kids to this arranged marriage, it would have been smoother. So this time he's keeping Regulus and Julia apart. Julia's wise enough to see all these manipulations, I guess you could say. We didn't know that our words at the wall in Pompeii would be our last. We had no idea what the adults were saying. We assumed that we would laugh and chatter and tease for the rest of our lives. Looking for page 104. Why is Pliny's uncle so stubborn? Why would he not get along with father? Why could the two of them not compromise and let the two of us wed? Father's kept me away from Regulus all this while. For my part, I have avoided Regulus too. Father has learned to save his marriage card for last. Perhaps Pliny and his uncle planned together to distract my father's attention with marriage plans. Perhaps Pliny was being deceitful to me all along. Well, again, she has Pliny and his uncle on one side of her thoughts and her father on the other side. To think ill of her father is very difficult. And she's starting to wonder if Pliny was the one who couldn't have been trusted, all in an attempt to stop loving Pliny. Page 106. Father spoke to me only a year ago. I want you to meet a young man. He's handsome, witty, and charming. They speak of him as the coming man of Rome. I wonder whether Father could be made to see reason. Perhaps if I spoke to him and explained to him exactly how I feel. Perhaps if Mother were finally to take my side. Eagles appearing in the sky at significant moments, flocks of geese being slaughtered in a dream. Why should anyone care what such events are thought to portend? So why plan the future, eh? You have no control over it. It could go sour on you. 108. Life was filled with fairy tales when I was a child. Once upon a time, a handsome king and a beautiful queen. Mother read Latin and my nurse read tales in Greek. Perhaps if Mother and I were to speak to Father, we always hide our feelings when he blusters. Perhaps if we explain to him how much this means to me. It will be difficult avoiding Pliny over the years. We will undoubtedly meet at public events in Rome. Perhaps I could ask Regulus to apply for a post somewhere far away, somewhere at the ends of the empire. Perhaps Britain could be the place where I could hide. Well, my little joke, I guess you could say, is that Pliny wants to get as far away from Rome and Pompeii and Julia as he can in the future. He thinks maybe he'll go to Britain, like out at the ends of the empire where the barbarians live. And Julia wants to get as far away as from Rome, where they stay in the winter, these aristocratic Romans, and Pompeii in the summer. And she thinks of Britain, as the farthest outpost of the empire, as far away as Pliny as she could get. So, my little joke, I suppose. Let's go to chapter 20, again, leaving out lots. 179. More thoughts from Julia, trying to evaluate our life. Now, you and I aren't ancient Romans, so we don't have forces in our lives that are quite the same, but we do have forces that oppose each other in our lives that we have to evaluate. And these include events, possible future events, and people. We have to kind of get a grip on things. We have to see clearly what it is that is the milieu in which we're living in order to have whatever measure of control is possible. And of course, there are certain things we can't control. So these are mythical patterns, not only the force of destruction that's looming over us at any possible time, cancer and so on, all these terrible things that can happen to individuals and people. This is 2020, we're living through COVID-19 assault on the whole world right now, although I wrote the novel earlier. But there are the outside events that come in and take control of us, but there are also ideas in our mind that can take control of our lives for better or for worse, and it's our role as people to try to sort all this out. So 179, 180. Action-wise, we hurry along the road, single file and in small groups, family of 2 or 3, some of them glancing back as if they're waiting for others to catch up. We shuffle along as ghosts. Of course, they're covered in ash, white ash, and it's in the dark, so she can only see people covered in white ash when the torches shine on them. But she has some memories. Sitting in my father's house and listening to the lyre. Pliny and his uncle and mother and father and I, after a meeting between my father and his uncle last year. If I could stop time still, it would be when Pliny and I looked at each other across the room. So one of these perfect moments as a memory. Moving on. The scenes and the people that we saw together as we walked around Pompeii. The stores, the streets, the houses, the artisans, the vendors, the priests, the couples strolling along holding hands. Regulus will be standing with his father at the altar. I will be led towards my fate at the proper time. The axe will fall. I will begin my new life. So, an image from one of the sacrifices that she and Pliny witnessed the summer before on the streets of Pompeii, this time with her as the sacrificial item. Oh, Pliny, why didn't you say something when we met in Rome? Why didn't you tell me how you felt? At least I would know that we were together in our misery. So they spoke of their love, but they never spoke when they met of the breakup. So still uncertain as to how he is feeling as time is going on, because they haven't met since that last day in Pompeii when their two adults had a falling out. Page 182. Oh, Pliny, to have you watching me as I take my vows with Regulus? I can't believe that you have moved on to other things. So even in the Roman Empire, in Rome, there was a small circle, as there is in London, England, Washington, D.C., Ottawa, Canada, of aristocrats, elites, I guess we would say, powerful political people and social people who go to all the same weddings and the same funerals, And Pliny will probably be there whenever she's at a public event with this husband she doesn't want to marry, Regulus. How terrible that will be for the rest of her life. Perhaps Regulus's father will break off with father tomorrow. They say that Regulus is the coming man of the decade. There must be scores of desirable fathers and daughters in Rome. So maybe Regulus's father can find someone else for him to marry. Whatever kind of person Pliny's uncle has turned out to be, whatever deceitful deception he practiced on my father, I know the boy with whom I made a sacred vow. So trying to think of all the reasons not to love Pliny, and then coming to the conclusion that no, he wasn't devious, he wasn't deceitful. The young man and I went walking. We talked and we fell in love, and all of this was 1 short year ago. I am determined that I will have a long talk with my father. I will ask him if he will permit me to say what is locked inside. I will insist that he allow me to speak my mind. I will consider tomorrow's weather when I rise in the morning. If it rains, it rains. If it shines, why, then it shines. Whatever tomorrow brings will be what it brings. My childhood ended in no time at all. Mother said that I should be married. Father started to look around. The problem with childhood is that it comes to an end too soon. Why will Mother not take a stand? Why will Mother not speak for me? What is it that keeps her from saying what I'm sure she must feel? 2 elderly people sitting and talking a long time from now. I would like to tell Pliny that I regret our meeting on the street corner in Rome. How cold we were when we said our goodbyes in the rain. So that's very human, I think, to regret the last moment with someone you care about, that maybe as wonderful as the relationship might have been, the ending of the relationship didn't have some kind of closure. We'd speak of closure as a necessary thing to humans. Even a breakup somehow needs to be ended in an acceptable, desirable way. Page 188, here's the action. Where's Julia as she's thinking all this? Well, it's been getting worse and worse, this eruption, and she has fled along with all the servants from her father's villa. Here's some action. We help one another through ditches. We huddle and watch the lightning in a field of wheat, a roar like thunder and a withering blast of ash and stone. Our faces are sooty and bleeding. How much further can we go on? We turn and stagger away from the fires on the mountain. I'm exhausted and my lungs are burning. People are collapsing all around me. If I fall down, I'll never get up. Every part of me is aching. I long to lie down in the field of wheat and sleep. Surely this nightmare won't last forever. Surely the heat and the wind and the rain of rock will come to an end. I think of my parents. I think of Pliny. I think of Pompeii. I think of one foot in front of the other. I'll just keep stumbling forward as long as I can go on. So highly conscious, of course, of this destructive force and how to get away from it, but thinking of Pliny and her parents and so on. We think on all levels at all times, no matter how exciting jumping out of an airplane might be, or all of these other fast action things people take part in. Their brains are always working at all levels on many, many, many topics. That's the whole theory of my novel writing. Again, here's an image I keep reading in these videos, but it's very pertinent. It's only mentioned once in the novel. Very subtle in the placement of it, but here I am emphasizing it. A young girl lying still on a blackened wheat field, her cheeks smeared with soot and drying blood. A woman checks to see if she is alive. Well, let's hope Julia makes it through. Let's hope if her father and Penny's uncle make it through, they have a change of heart. Let's hope everything works out for the best. Okay, some readings, and then as a conclusion, you might say, to this topic. We think on many levels. At the most conscious level of thinking, we think in the perception, understanding, and communicating medium of prose, in which our thoughts are interpretations of a deeper level of thought. At the least conscious level of thinking, we think in the perception, understanding, and communicating medium of imagery, in a language which has not been reduced to the level of prose thought. The advantage of prose thought is that it is clear. The disadvantage of prose thought is that it is less complex than it was in its original form. The advantage of image thought is that it is complex. The disadvantage of image thought is that it often remains subconscious and demands interpretation into prose thought in order to become conscious. So I think at the deepest levels of our minds, we're able to take in everything, the complexity of the world and our place in it and our relationships with other people. But we simplify on the surface of our mind. How can we get through the day if we don't? Do you like your boss or not? That's a pretty simple thought. But somewhere in your mind, there's a really complex pattern that shows your boss in all his or her manifestations. The beauty of an art form such as a novel is that it is an image construct which can be considered consciously while retaining the image pattern complexity of the thinking process of the subconscious mind. The desire to shed light on the subterranean thought patterns of one's existence and the existence of one's cultural community is the force which leads me on to plan and write yet another novel. So a serious piece of literature, whether a play, a novel, or a poem, is highly complex, and that's really the subconscious thoughts of the writer brought up to the surface and put on paper with ink and paper. It's an ink and paper view of the deepest level of thinking, which is complexity and which is in imagery. Another passage from one of my journals. All of my novels seem to be memory novels, but far from being nostalgic, they are concerned with memories which are being processed for imagery value in a time of present moment crisis. The images of memory are in the process of being scanned, selected, and interlayered among the imagery of the present moments of the lives of the characters in order to create an image pattern, which is an interpretation of the moment, the day, and the life for that character at that split second of thought. The outer frame of danger and the inner story of image assessment is a problem-solving exercise for both of the 17-year-old main characters, Pliny and Julia. What do they each want for their lives? Should the after-disaster situation allow them to make a choice? The plot question for the reader of the novel will be, when the aftermath of the eruption of Vesuvius becomes apparent, will the two young lovers be free to marry each other and live happily ever after? The thought speculation question for the reader of the novel will be, have the two main characters, Pliny and Julia, processed the imagery of their lives accurately enough to be able to live their lives successfully? Well, that's the task of all main characters in all serious literature, to evaluate life accurately with the complexity that is fair to the reality of their lives and to do so successfully so that they can go on with their lives and make them better if possible. The book then, just to wind this up, is it's Pompeii, sorry, Vesuvius Dominus, the novel by John Passfield. It's available on Amazon and you can buy it there. If you go to my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, there are 2 free books. One is my notebook, the notebook I kept as I was researching, planning, and writing this novel. The other is my journal, which I wrote mainly while I was polishing the novel. Both of them deal with novel writing, which is, of course, a major topic with me. They deal with the poetic and the prose novel and the difference. They deal with serious literature and how that differs from sub-literature or entertainment literature. And they deal with people in situations and families, communities, towns, and so on, and all these threats from outside, whether it be war or depression or COVID-19 as we have now, although I wrote the novel before this happened, but other things have impinged on people's lives. So all those topics, and those books are book length, and they're both free on my website. So lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching.